What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fit Couch podcast. Today we've got Justin Traud. Oh, I said it right. All right, awesome. On the show, and I'm really excited to talk to you, man.
Sweet, man. Thanks for having me here, and I look forward to chatting with you guys.
Yeah, cool. So one of the things that, I'm from the strength training realm, right? The bodybuilding side of fitness. You tend to be more of the endurance guy. I've done some couple endurance things with you in the past, and
Yes.
it definitely makes me feel very humble. So tell me a little bit about how what was the first endurance sport that you got into that you really thrived in or liked, or what gave you the bug?
Oh man, that's a great question, and yeah, especially when I sit next to someone or do something next to someone like you, I don't really feel like I have the strength background for sure, but I've always been genetically leaned towards endurance and being kind of like thinner. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but in high school I got into running, and it all kind of came together because I had to get a job, and so I couldn't do track and cross country, and so my PE coach my junior year of high school said,
so cross country track you were already into?
I was trying to get into it, and then I couldn't get into it because I had to have a job. My parents just basically told me, hey, you got to get a job because you have to buy a car to get to school. And so, too bad you can't have track or cross country. So I wanted to still get faster, and I wanted to run. I enjoyed it. And so my PE coach just said, hey, you should try riding your bike. And so I lived right next to the American River Parkway in Sacramento here in California. And so I just started riding my bike farther and farther, started timing myself. This was on an old giant mountain bike, and next thing you know, got hooked in with some local cyclists, started training, got on a team, and I ranked up pretty fast, and then got scouted, and so I was on a pro development team. And then
wait, how do you get to the point of being scouted? What are you doing to even have scouts looking at you?
So
you're not just riding around the bike?
So it's like a combination of being a certain age and getting really good results at big name races. And so there was a race up in Nevada City that I had done pretty well, and I think I was 18 at the time. And so they were looking to do a pro development team.
And at this point, you had a BMX bike, or this is a mountain bike?
This is a road bike. So I started doing road racing, like Tour de France. So I'd finally gotten a carbon bike, and at that point, I had to buy everything on my own. I had no sponsors. I had no nothing. Right. The first cycling team I was on, you bought your own biking kit. You bought your own helmet, your own shoes, and then as I started doing better in races and getting more results, you started Cat 5 and you worked 4, 3, 2, 1. So I think it was a Cat 3.
And that's like a ranking in the system?
Yeah, and you're working your way up, and then after Cat 1 you go pro. And so when I was a Cat 3, I started getting some results, podiums, so first, second, or third place at some big name races. And like I said, there was these guys that were trying to put together a team for a bunch of young men who were under the age of 23, so it's like a U23 pro development team.
Oh wow!
And so they started putting, there was 8 of us together, and so that's when I finally got sponsored. So then we had a bike that they were providing. They provided helmets. I got shoes. I got the whole kit. I got everything. And the cat, I love it. And so that was when I kind of felt like I was really making it big, and and so I raced as a Cat 2 for a while. And then started getting some results. And when I was 22 years old, it kind of got to the point where it was all right, either I'm going to make a professional career out of this, or I'm going to kind of just do it recreationally, because it takes up a lot of time at that level. Yeah.
How many hours a week are you riding, to get to, as you were moving up that Cat 3, Cat 2, Cat 1, how many hours a week are you riding and training to get there?
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, I know it was at least 20, if not more.
Hours per week? Oh, wow.
Easily, yeah. Mondays and Fridays were off days. Tuesday was, whatever the coach said the workout was. Tuesdays and Thursdays usually were the same.
So you would actually train with a team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so usually a team or an individual teammate, because not everyone lived in the same area. So I had one teammate that lived in Sacramento area, and we raced, the whole team as a group, we raced all in California and Nevada.
Wow.
And so I got really into endurance, and back then, my idea of a recovery meal was a plate of pizza bites. So I would go out for a Saturday, and I'd go ride 80, 90 miles, and then I'd come back and I'm like, oh man, I I really rode a lot. I need 2 plates of pizza bites today.
Bagel bites?
And yeah, dude, all of them. All of them. I just load the freezer and then a ginger beer. I thought I was being like healthy with, ginger beer. And that's how I really, really got into endurance and just kind of like bike racing all around California and Nevada. I went to nationals, so that was pretty cool. Lots of big name guys there that I used to see on TV, and next thing you know, I was like kind of racing next to them.
Dang,
so that was like cool. Pretty humbling too, because they're just absolutely like phenoms. So like getting into cycling, it definitely changed my life, and also the time of year, or the time of my life where I was kind of in high school and college. It was perfect timing because I just had so much time to be able to train. No other like really major responsibilities, and I wasn't married, didn't have a kid.
No full-time job.
No full-time job.
Yeah.
I was just kind of going to college and working part-time.
Yeah, so that's why I feel like it's so important for young people to get involved with anything, something like that, something they're really can get passionate about, because those are the years that you can put in that time. Like that's for me. It used to be guitar. I put everything in there, and then I don't really have an excuse not to be playing anymore. It's just like I have this all or nothing mentality,
I get that, right? It's like if I'm gonna go in, like I want to be able to commit. I don't want to go like half in, right? And so, like the whole thing about finding cycling was supposed to be just the support to help my breathing for running in high school, just for fun, and then it ended up,
being the main thing
that like literally was like a foundation of my life and. Was like a lot of like the glory days,
So have you ever stopped cycling? Have you been cycling ever since?
So when I turned 23, I took like 2 years off, and that's when I started running and getting into all of the other things that I wanted to do when I didn't have time. Because like when I was training that much, my weekends were just cycling if I wasn't racing, I was doing long training rides, and so I didn't really have too much time for anything else. So I ended up retiring from cycling. Got a job at REI, the outdoor store.
Oh,
so
nice.
then I was
that
able to pro deal. Started skiing, started rock climbing, started running, kayaking. I literally did all of those things that I could do, and had been like putting off because it was just taking so much time cycling. And so there was always like that bug in the back of my head that was saying, oh man, I've never ran a marathon, but I've ridden over 100 miles like every week, every Saturday, for like 3 months straight.
So you would do 100 miles on one Saturday, regularly?
Mm-hmm. Pretty often, yeah.
Man, that's crazy because I was just like
Saturday
felt so good about myself when I completed 100 miles on the Agony ride with you.
Yeah.
Like, dang, I rode 100 miles. That's like going to San Francisco from my apartment.
Yeah.
And
that's a long way, man.
Yeah, I know.
And so like, I don't know. I was just like, well, if I can ride that far, I can go run a marathon. I don't really need to train. I'll tell you, man, cycling muscles are not running muscles. They are so different. Oh, man.
So wait, did you when you decided I want to run a marathon, did you run a half marathon first? Or did you just say, no I'm just going to do it?
I think the furthest I had run at that point was like 8 to 10 miles.
Really?
But I was like all cycling, man. Like I said, I didn't really do anything else. I was just like, I got really good at it, and I got really into cycling. And I just kind of had done that for a while. And so, yeah, I ended up just kind of running a half marathon. Eventually, the 2 to 3 mixes, trying to do that.
So in hindsight, no, since that was your first like little training plan, that was for the marathon, right? Your first marathon?
Yes.
You kind of like use the cycling.
Yeah, and
did it work out that well, or did you learn, like if you were to look back, do you like cringe at the way you had that set up?
So I definitely use the same plan even now in my running. It's the same setup. So Monday, Friday rest days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, or like different things. So like Tuesdays and Thursdays are like intervals or strength days, and Wednesday being kind of like a midweek, almost like endurance, like a shorter endurance day, and Saturday being like the long run, like it would be a long ride, and then Sunday being the not as long but another base miles day.
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay. And you still kind of use that same kind of setup?
I use the same kind of setup. Just really? It works for my schedule, and I think a lot of it's just what works for your schedule.
So for the marathon, how did that take me through what that felt like running your first marathon?
Oh man, it was painful. I thought I had trained, and I underestimated it. They say the CIM is pancake flat, in California here, and it is not flat. There are rollers on those roads, and so I remember I got to mile 18, and just everything hurt. Really? And I was like, well, I am determined, and I'm going to finish, and I finished, but then I was like, okay, cool, done, check that box. Not the fastest time. I think it was like well over 4 hours. I was so slow, but I got it done. and just survived. I just wanted to check that goal, and then I started listening to David Goggins. And so honestly, that's what got me into ultra running.
Really? So you're like, okay, cool, never a marathon again, and then let's just do an ultra marathon.
Yeah. So like basically, I started reading the book or listening to the audiobook Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, and I was like, all right, man, this guy's kind of like crazy. And, but the message, maybe it's not for everyone, or hey, take it with a grain of salt. And I started thinking, I was like, man, you know what? Like, I think I could run like 100 miles, but I'm like, that's pretty ridiculous. So then I started just like, all right, well, maybe I'll sign up for like a 50K, and like, when's a good time of year to do it for my life? And so I kind of just.
After you ran the 50K and then you did the 100-miler, one of the things I'm curious about is like, is there a point in that 100-mile ride where like you just hit a wall? Not just you personally, but is there any kind of commonality where most people find that whatever mile 70, like it's all mental after that, or like share with me like what that looks
absolutely.
Like.
So first of all, I think like everyone kind of has their like when their demons come out, right? So like for me, it's usually in the first like third, because the sugars are starting to wear off. And I'm like, man, I'm 18 miles in. I still have like 82 to go. And so the task almost seems so daunting ahead. And so for me, like, that's where the demons are, right? And then it's like once you get over the halfway point, you're like, oh, man, I'm already halfway done. Yeah, I'm in more pain now. But, like, the end is that much closer. It's almost more in reach, right? So it seems a little bit more attainable. And that's where, like, I've definitely, like, felt personally where, like, at least, like, the quote-unquote demons come out. But for sure, though, in like ultra marathons and like cycling, like the long events, they say like the first half is physical and the second half is mental.
Oh, okay, so that is a thing people say. Okay, all right.
It's a thing people say. Yeah. I've heard people say it in races. I've experienced it. I clicked over the 50 miles and I'm like, all right, cool. Everything's just gonna be in pain, so it's all mental now. Like there's no way around it. You kind of have to just grit through it, and
because you don't train in that type of pain, right? So your training only takes you so far, and then just pure willpower and commitment has to take you the rest. Huh?
Yeah, and that's where a lot of things go into. Fueling, hydration. doing a lot of things right, and then you could have an off race, you could have a really great race. So sometimes weather.
What's your typical? I know, like you said, depending on weather, I'm sure that changes things. But typically, what would you on a normal, regular, like 70 to 80 degree day? What would your fueling protocol be on a marathon or versus 100 mile? Do you fuel the same amount every few hours, or does that build? Is there is it linear, or is there the longer you go, the bigger your fuelings have to be at each fueling station? Like what does that look like?
That's a great question. I definitely think it kind of goes into like what your end game is and your goal. So like a marathon would be considered to me like a shorter race. So I could fuel for a marathon off of just like gels, right? Like quick, easy energy. So those little goo gels, Cliff gels, just something your body can easily absorb. And it's like the same rate though, right? It's about 100 to 200 calories an hour. So whether it's running a marathon or a 100-miler, where the difference comes in for me is when I go to run.
200 calories, that's it?
Yeah, about 100 calories, 100 to 200 calories an hour. Yeah, everybody's different,
Because you're probably burning 300 calories an hour, right?
We'll do 300 calories, yeah.
So
I'm a little like leaner and lighter weight.
Oh, okay. So no matter what,
I would be like on the like middle to like lower end.
Got it.
But again, I have a friend who's almost 80 calories, 100 calories an hour more than me, right? So almost double, more 1.5. And so that all comes through training runs and testing. Hey, like I just ran 20 miles and I feel dead. I think I underfueled.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I need to bump it up a little bit. Or oh man, I finished that run and my stomach, I feel heavy, I feel bloated. And you're like, I definitely overate. Like I could have fueled less,
okay.
And so you kind of like, it's like shakeout runs, right? So you kind of do these simulated runs, if you can on where your race is going to be, running the course ahead of time, and simulating the weather conditions. So basically, when I was training for our first 100-miler, we ran sections of the course.
Okay.
In the rain, which just happened to be raining on the weekends, but in the rain, in the simulated temperatures. So when the race day came, it was the same weather that I used to be, running in, and
so you're more in your element there.
You're more in your element, and then the main difference too is running longer distances. You train your stomach to ingest like real food. So, running a 100-miler, I don't really eat gels at all, right? But I'll eat like half a burrito at an aid station and then go run and feel completely fine.
Wow, that's weird. I would think
Right?
that you'd be able to run further on like a marathon rate with some food in your system.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. One could say, oh, man, I can run 100 miles and just eat gels. At a certain point, your stomach's going to sour.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
if you're just eating just straight up gels, like you're going to, like, your stomach's going to revolt. It's going to be tired of the sugar, and you're going to be like, oh, this is gross. I'm going to throw up. Luckily, there's something, knock on wood, I've never thrown up in a race. But, it is very common for people to get, like, stomach issues. So, like, one piece of advice I always say is, like, hey, like, keep an anti-diuretic pill on you. So if you get, like, the runner's trots, after, like, mile 50 or whatever, or if you have too much caffeine accidentally, you can take the pill, help your stomach out. But that was, like, the biggest thing for me was going from running a marathon or a 50K, so, like, 31 miles, to, like, once I started running over 8 hours, the longer running, the races became over 8 hours, the more I had to go to, like, real foods.
Oh, okay.
So, like, my training runs, instead of bringing, like, gels and just carb mix in my bottles, I turned it into, okay, now I'm bringing a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm bringing gummy bears. I'm bringing, all sorts of stuff. Sometimes I'd even bring little slices of pizza.
Okay.
Because I would have pizza on race day at aid stations, in the middle of the night.
So not much has changed since the high school years.
Yeah,
Pizza bites.
man. Oh, I love those pizza bites, man. They're my kryptonite. Now, and so, yeah, like when I did the canyons and when I did Rio de Lago, I was eating pretty solid food. I was eating a burrito and I was eating, slices of pizza. Again, not too much at once, right? Like a slice or two, and then, run, for a couple, like an hour or two, and then eat another little bit, with little snacks in between.
Yeah, okay. So for people who are like interested in learning how to build their endurance and like take on bigger feats, how would you suggest, in a nutshell, I know it's probably could be pretty complex, but how would you set up a training plan to even get to 100 miles? Like, do you run 70 miles one day, like 3 weeks before, just to like get 70% there? Does it work like that? Like,
yeah, no, that's a good question. Definitely, like, you don't. A lot of people sometimes will think, oh man, I'm going to run 100 miles, so I need to start running like 50 milers every other weekend and 70 milers, but it doesn't really work like that. Usually most 100-miler training plans, like, will have your peak week top out at like a Saturday run being like 30 to 34 miles.
Oh, really?
And then having like the Sunday be, another 30 miles or, sometimes 13, depending on the structure. But the biggest thing is, like, you just take your goal and you work backwards, right? So everyone has a different life, everyone has different schedules, and so what's always worked for me, and I've even seen this in a couple other like professional athletes, who publish their books, is they'll just say, hey, you have that race that's on your calendar, like you really want to do that race, and you work backwards. So, for example, this race, the race I have planned for this year is in November. So I just put it on the calendar and I built my training plan working backwards.
How does that look when you work? What do you mean by building it backwards?
So you have like a 6-month training plan. So you're like, all right, cool. So my training plan is going to really start 6 months out, right? And so, because I have plenty of time. My first 50 miler, it was 3 months out. So it was more of a condensed training plan, more of an aggressive ramp up, right? And so you want to make sure you're stretching every day, and you're kind of cognizant of any kind of injuries that could be on the fringe there. But yeah, it's mainly like you pick that calendar and you can kind of work backwards, and then you have to know your limits too.
So when I talked to Chris, actually I had him on, he was saying that really the main thing, and you can tell me if this is correct or if this is half truth, that the main thing is getting more time on your feet and just building up the amount of time that you're running or walking. So is that like really what it boils down to at the fundamental level?
So that was the same thing that I took over from cycling. Was once you get into further and further races, it was more about hours training, time on feet, time on the saddle, versus like physical miles covered, distance covered, right?
Yeah.
And so you taking that same thing and applying it to ultra running, and that was the same thing in our plan. We had our mileage goal, but like the whole goal for our Saturday run was like to be about an 8-hour run.
Oh, okay.
So we were like, okay, hey, we're gonna go run 30 miles today or 34 miles, and it's it should take us about 8 hours because the goal is to be out there 8 hours. We want to get used to being on our feet for longer periods of times, whether that's like running or power hiking all the climbs. You're out there, you're moving, you're getting used to being on your feet, and you're getting your body used to fueling for that long, right? You're getting your stomach used to working out for that long. And that was something that my stomach had to get used to was, first it would get to 6 hours in, and then I'd start to really feel like an upset stomach, and then I'd kind of do a little bit more training, and then next I could make it 8 hours before it was upset, and then next thing it was 16 hours I could do a race and it wouldn't get upset. And next thing you know, now it's like, a little bit longer and a little bit longer.
So on your training, like the most you would run when you're training for 100 miles, you said the most you ever ran was like 30 something miles?
Our peak day was 34 miles on a Saturday.
Really?
Yeah,
and what was it
33.
usually before that, or did it slowly build up?
It slowly builds up, yeah. And so again, it kind of goes with like doing the plan backwards, right? So you start low, and they go off of like your weekly mileage. Right, so our weekly mileage starting out was 21 miles total this week, Monday through Sunday.
Yeah.
And then the next week it was like 23 miles. And then the next week it was like 26 miles. And then it would go like 29 miles, and then it would kind of drop down a little bit, back down to like 24 miles to kind of give you like a rest week almost. But you're still building. And it goes back up to 29 miles, then 31 miles, and then next thing you know, we're running like 40 miles, 50 miles a week.
Oh my God, I love what you just said, because that's really exactly how it works with building muscle.
Yeah.
Like training is like it's that what you just said is progressive overload, right?
Yeah.
And it's like people in the gym,
like
one of the things that I, as a young lifter, wish I would have known that I know now is that progressive overload, the word progressive.
Yes.
And like I would go and then I'd be benching like, okay, a plate on each side, and then the next week I think I would be benching a plate with a 25 on each side. And like that's such a huge percentage jump in a week, and that if I could have just put 5 pounds on the bar every week and slowly built up, and then you hit a little wall, you taper, do a deload, and then boom, build back up again.
Yep.
Yeah, this is something that I've really learned and adopted pretty recently in my training in the gym.
Yeah.
And it's great to hear that like that's really what you guys, I mean, that's really all it is progressive overload, just small increments over time. And I'm assuming the longer time you give yourself, the better off you're going to be, right?
Exactly.
Like if you can give yourself 6 months to train rather than 3,
so
it's going to be, you can do those smaller progressions that your body can recover from and readapt.
Exactly. And you said like being able to recover, and it also makes you less prone to injury, right?
Yeah.
So the steeper that curve, the more likely you are to get injured. And I've done a steeper training plan, like a shorter training plan, like a more aggressive ramp up, and I ended up giving myself shin splints. And I was like, man, I run all the time. I'm fine, and I still got shin splints, even though I was running ultras, for that point for over a year. But it can happen to anyone. It's just because you get too much too fast.
Yeah.
And you feel this pressure. Oh, I'm gonna go run a 50 miler. Oh, I'm gonna go run a 100 miler. I need to train all the time. I need to train every time I can get, because I need time on feet. But it's like you have to recover.
Yeah.
And it also goes into sleep and nutrition.
Yes.
And everyone talks about it, but there's I still do, there's the mentality, oh man, I got to get up early, I got to get it in, I got to work full time, I got to do all these things.
Yes.
It's like, maybe that looks good for some people, but if you have like a family and you have kids, and you have to break that workout into, 2 parts, maybe you can't get your, 8-mile run on a Tuesday in at one chunk. So maybe that looks like, okay, I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to go run 4 miles, and then after work, I'm going to go run 4.
Sure, well, you said something that was really important, and I stress this, and no one ever wants to hear it because it's not the sexy answer. It's like, I'm having a hard time building muscle, I'm having a hard time losing weight, and they're struggling, and the first thing I usually ask is, well, how are you sleeping?
How are you sleeping?
And, I sleep like crap. Oh, I can't, I've always slept like this. It's like, okay, before we go anywhere, can we get that taken care of? Because like getting good sleep is a miracle drug.
It is.
It is everything. Until once you start getting good quality sleep, you're going to realize, holy crap. I mean, I could go into what that does muscular building wise, but like for anything you're doing, right? Just cognitive. If there's any advice I could give someone if that's struggling with their fitness journey, no matter what it is, whether it's endurance or strength training or anything, fix your sleep. Get good 7 to 9 hours of good quality solid sleep, and
so key.
Yeah, it's just it's so important.
People don't realize like how much it adds up. There was a phase where I was trying to do my runs before work, and so I was waking up about an hour and a half earlier than I would, and I'd get them in. And it was great, I'd get out, get it done, get it out of the way. But it started adding up how I was losing that hour and a half sleep, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So then by the end of the week, I mean, it's 7.5 hours roughly, plus or minus, and so it was like almost I was shorting myself an extra like night of sleep.
Damn.
And so what happens is you end up burning out, your training runs and workouts, you're like, man, I'm always exhausted. Like, what's going on? Like, I can't lift I can't run as fast as I normally.
Motivation starts to dwindle because you're not making any progress.
Yep, and you're just like, I feel tired all the time, and you're like, I'm eating healthy. I don't understand. Like, I'm getting my runs in. Like, I should be seeing my fitness gains. And you're like, okay, well, you're literally, your body is not recovering.
Yeah.
And so, and I like what you said too, was a lot of people, I've always slept bad. I've always just like, I've only ever needed 6 hours or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like, that's just who I am. And it's like, okay, maybe there's that 1 in 1,000 who can operate off of, 6 hours of sleep and still work out a ton. But for us regular humans.
Yeah. Us mortals. Yeah.
Yeah. As mortals, that was the big game changer for my training, was getting enough sleep. And I remember texting my friend saying, hey man, like, I'm just going to change this up. And it was like night and day.
Oh, totally. And the thing was, I've always slept like this. Oh, I'm fine. I only need 5 or 6 hours. Like, okay. My first thought is, so you don't know what you're missing. Because if you start getting better sleep, you're going to start unlocking so much more potential in your life.
Yeah.
So,
and when I first started running, I was working nights too. And so what I thought was normal, was not normal.
Yeah.
And so when you said you don't know what you're missing, I didn't know what I was missing. I just thought I was fine. I was like, oh man, I can work nights, which means I have days free to train. I can just train and then, sleep a little bit and reset, And then, even just regular sleep-wake cycle, making sure you guys can try and set up time where you wake up at the same time every day, plus or minus, right? It's really key. And you'll notice you'll be able to be not only in a better mood, and you'll have better results and quicker recovery.
Yes.
And
then you're going to be able to fit those training runs in there and do the other things in your life.
Yeah.
Without just being completely whooped, and then everything starts to suffer. But that suffering and mediocrity becomes the norm, and then you don't realize that I'm living mediocre. And if I would just fix my sleep, I mean, if you have to get to I say do whatever you have to do to get good quality sleep first.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, and then we can talk about nutrition, right?
Oh man.
So with nutrition, obviously, with fueling through those long runs, that's critical. Hydration, nutrition. I mean, that can make the difference between crapping out and making it.
Yeah, there's like a phrase called bonking, right? So it's like when you run out of calories and your body just bonk, you like hit the wall and you crash because you ran out of fuel. Yeah. It is a terrible feeling and it sucks.
And there's really nothing you can do about it at that point, right?
It's so hard to bounce back.
Yeah.
I've bounced back like twice that I can remember.
Wow.
And it was rough. I was like, man, I will never let that happen. I will always make sure I carry extra calories. Whenever I go out for a training run, if I think I'm going to need this many calories, I'd bring a little extra.
Yeah.
And I've even had some runs where I've even gone through that. And luckily I've been training with people and they overpack too. I've been able to take some of their like candy bars or something, or like, hey, here's an extra, fig bar. Super great. And so
one of those some of that fueling you have to remind yourself to do, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're just out there running, you can kind of get in the zone. You can feel like, oh no, I'm fine, but you're only fine, and then you're not fine, right?
Yeah,
so you've got to make sure that even if you have to set an alarm.
No, set an alarm on your Garmin watch for sure. Like tip number 1, man, you can just set a little beeper to go off every hour on your watch. And because you think, oh, I'll remember that. No, you're totally right. You'll get into a race. You'll be focusing on where you're going. What's the next aid station? What am I going to change? Okay, I'm going to the night. And you get distracted.
Yeah. And
you're like, oh, shoot, it's been an hour and a half. Oh, it's been 2 hours. I skipped an hour of when I should have eaten. Now I got to try and get those calories
in catch-up game
while still running and going.
And then who knows how your digestive system is going to handle that much food at once since you put off the other meal, right?
Exactly.
Who knows?
So when I have, and I'm human, I make mistakes, and when I've done that, I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to have to power hike this next climb instead of running it. And I'm just going to have to eat the full sandwich, and give myself about 30 minutes to kind of like let it settle. All right, and then get back to my routine, right? And keep going in the race. But I'd say sleep is huge. Nutrition is huge. Something I definitely have taken for granted is, I've always been like a lean runner. Like I haven't had to lose weight. I haven't had to try to do anything. And so I think I took advantage of that. And then once I realized, oh, hey, I could clean up my nutrition, like see what happens. It was like putting the right gas in the car, like the right kind of fuel in the car that was meant to have, right?
Yeah.
It was like the difference between having, pizza bites as a recovery meal to actually having like, chicken, rice, potatoes, all that stuff, like healthy foods.
Yeah.
It was like all of a sudden it's like, wow, I feel great. Like I don't feel like carb coma after a run, I feel like I can run and then keep going with my day.
Yeah. Nice.
So
Yeah.
nutrition's huge.
Just whole foods primarily, right? Which what I always say is, no one's perfect, but we try to eat primarily 80-90% of our diet whole foods, right? Especially if you're training for something, make sure you put, like you said, put the right gas in the car, right? If you need premium, put premium in there.
No, for sure.
Right? If you want your car to run well, then you got to put the better gas in there, and that's that.
Like the biggest thing I learned too recently is make food that you like, right? So like some people, they'll try to be healthy, and so they just get the healthy foods and then they cook it and it's like and then they fizzle out after like a day or two. But like I'm like, man, if you can make it taste good, there's a lot of simple things out there. You can meal prep.
I love it.
You can make ahead of time, and it's also cheaper because running gets expensive. Like cycling gets expensive with all the gels and the bars and whatever. So like one thing I mentioned was PB&Js, right? Those are pretty simple. You can get some simple like
it's like the
whole
cheapest
grain
snack
bread
you can
with
make.
peanut butter and jelly, and you can eat those on runs every time. You can change up the jellies. You can change the types of peanut butter. You can change the bread. Get a little variety.
But I love you said something that's so valuable that is another thing that I preach about all the time is like when I'm making a meal plan for someone, like, oh, tell me what to eat. Like, okay, well, first of all, I want to know what will you eat, and what are you excited about eating? Because I'm not going to put something in your meal plan that you're just going to like stick through and just kind of white knuckle it for the next 12 weeks till you get to your goal. No, we got to find ways to eat food that you're excited about eating this food. You look forward to it, and you're not looking to. I don't really want this, and then I'm going to get something else to replace it. And then the food goes bad. You wasted money, and you're not on track to your goal. So there's so many ways to do that because there's especially nowadays, there's so many seasonings and sauces and like low calorie this that you can add on there. Or there's so many things that we can do, right? And now with the internet, there's all these genius cooks that give you these cool TikTok recipes, and there's tons of stuff online, and there's so many options out there now that you don't have to eat bland oatmeal. We can do like overnight oats with and flavor it however you want. You can make chicken with some cool low calorie barbecue sauce and have rice sometimes, sweet potatoes sometimes, and change up your vegetable seasoning, whatever.
Yep.
So
dude, we could go forever on that, and it's like variety is key. Making sure you like it is key. Like, and this is all stuff like I'm just learning as I go. Hey, okay, look, I meal prep this. Okay, I wasn't a huge fan like I thought I was. All right, hey, I'm gonna try and probably do this as a twist. But having it available and having those things will keep you from feeling like tempted when your coworkers are around you with fast food every day.
Totally.
And what I found too is like eventually like that just does. You start to kind of. It doesn't sound good anymore after a while. I had a coworker today show up with I think it was Jack in the Box. And I was just like, man, that just doesn't really sound good because smelling it made me almost like feel like, oh man, if I ate that, I'd feel heavy and I'd want to take a nap.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And I'm like, that just does not sound desirable.
If I ate that, my energy levels would feel crashed. I would be bogged down.
You're like, man, I gotta go do things today. I want to go to the gym later. I gotta go meet some friends. Like I want to get my stuff in. And so, after a while, I'd say it takes get like 30 days, get your gut microbiome changed over, getting used to eating all the healthy foods, and then you kind of keep that ball rolling, and you keep that nutrition with sleep like we talked about. Yeah. And then like
the world is yours. If you can have good nutrition and sleep, everything else is like on top of that. That needs to be the base. Yeah. And then there's really no height that the mountain can't grow.
Yeah. And then like I think ultra running, other than that, is like mental.
Yeah.
It's like a muscle in a way, you got a thing. And like the cookies in the cookie jar, like David Goggins talks about, hey, I ran 31 miles. I can, remember that. Or I remember when I was here, I've gone through harder.
Yeah. And having the mental, psychological stuff.
And really having that goal is huge, right? So like when I was training for my 100 miler, again, I was around my coworkers and they always wanted to go out and get drinks and hang out. And at the time, I was very adamant about, avoiding alcohol because alcohol was shown to inhibit sleep.
Yeah. Yep.
And this was the phase where I was realizing the impact of how good sleep was. Yeah. And even like having 1 or 2 beers, my watch tracks my sleep and my sleep score would dive by like 20 points, whatever your watch is. It could be different, but you're just like, I wake up and I'm still sore. Why? Because I didn't really sleep that good.
Yeah.
Did that really affect me? Yes, it did. I was just a little bit more sensitive than even others.
Yeah.
And so I had to make the decisions. It's like, okay, what is my priority?
Mm-hmm.
Is my priority doing whatever it takes, going all in for this goal? Or is my priority going kind of like, yeah, I'm going to like 90% kind of go towards this goal. That's going to be the toughest thing I've ever done. But I'm also going to hold back and enjoy with the coworkers, right?
Yeah, then I think the process becomes actually less enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You, before we actually started rolling, and you said something about you came to a revelation, or someone talked about like training for a marathon, or how to train for that, and how that would carry over to anything else in life. I don't.
No,
I'm misquoting what you're saying, but hopefully I'm like refreshing your memory.
So at my jiu-jitsu gym, I was talking with another guy, and we were talking about it, and he's like, hey man, like, what's it like running ultra marathons? Like, what is the biggest piece of advice you'd get, or what's like the biggest thing you've gained? And so it was really easy on my mind, because we had literally just talked about it. And so I think the biggest thing is like, we call it just getting to the next aid station, right? The old timey way of saying is eating an elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Right? And so I kind of alluded to it earlier when I said, oh man, the toughest part for me is the beginning first third of that race, because the demons come out and you have so much left.
Yeah.
And so I learned this on my own on a backpacking trip that I had like kind of committed more. I didn't realize how much I had bit off, but I was alone. I was doing a solo trip, and I had gotten like blisters all over my feet by day 2. So I still had 6.5 more days of going, and it was only going to go more elevation. And I'd parked my car way at the end, and I was way out there alone. But it was a goal, and I wanted to see this scenery. I wanted to get there. And so I was like, okay, am I willing to do whatever it takes? So I learned that if you think about how far you have to go all at once, it can be overwhelming, and that's why most people drop out of races.
Yes.
Because they just think, oh my gosh, if I'm in this much pain now, and I still have this far to go, like they just get overwhelmed, or whatever reason, and sometimes they drop out, right? So, but for me, it's like, I'll find myself doing that in a race. Oh man, dude, my calves are tight. Oh man, my hammies, and I still have 50 more miles.
Yeah.
And if you start thinking about all the stuff that's left,
it's like a
all you
negative
still have
spiral,
to do, it's a negative spiral. So what you got to do is you got to just get to the next aid station.
Nice.
Just get to and that goes through running through the night. Like some people don't like running through the darkness. Like, man, there goes the sun. I'm gonna run for the next 10 hours through the night, 8 hours through darkness. Like, that doesn't sound fun. Okay, well, what's next up? Just focus on the next checkpoint. Okay, the next aid station is 4 miles away. Okay, I'm gonna get to that aid station. I'm gonna fuel up with these items, and I'm gonna be fully prepared. And you kind of think about it. Then you get to that aid station, do what you need to do. Then you allow yourself to think, okay, what's the next aid station after that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the same thing could go to be said about your day. You wake up and you're like, man, I have a super packed day, super stressful things going on. I've got all these challenges in my life. It feels like things are crashing down around you. Bills are piling up, and you're like, all right, it can be super overwhelming. What's the same strategy?
Totally.
Just get to that next aid station. Just focus on it at a time. Okay, I'm gonna brush my teeth, get dressed, make sure I have my coffee and my food. Okay, check.
Boom.
Okay, now I'm going to get to work. Okay, now that I'm at work, now I'm going to focus on, okay, what's the priorities here? Okay, boom, now I'm outside of work. Okay, I'm going to go for my run, right? If you wake up and you're like, man, I have to get ready. I got to find out when to meal prep or cook in the morning. I got all these meetings going on, and I got to get my workout in today. You're like, I'm probably just going to skip the workout and just go home and watch TV, right?
This goes to like why mindset is so important. And when you find yourself, and I've been telling people this for years in the gym, when like, okay, I want to lose. What's your goal? I want to lose 40 pounds. I want to lose 50 pounds. And that's great, right? That's cool.
40 pounds.
Yeah, which is great. Like you have 100, I want to bite off this 100 miles, but I tell them, okay, cool. That's a great goal. Let's lose 4 pounds this month.
Yep.
That's it.
That's the next aid station.
That's all I want you to do is let's set a goal and get 4 pounds lost this month. That's all we're going to worry about. Quit worrying about the 50 pounds, because then what you're going to do is you're going to start justifying overworking, under eating. I'm not getting it fast enough. This is too long. I don't want to do this. This is too hard. It's like, hey, it's easy. Just worry about showing up today.
Yeah. Just
walk in the door.
Yes.
And just
get there. Get your shoes on. Get out the door.
And get there. And you know what? If you do a few sets and you're really not feeling it, you can always leave. But the problem is, the good thing is when you come in, you do a couple sets.
Usually
now you're like, all right, I'm good. I'm here. I'm fired up. And then it fuels more, right?
See, and that's, dude. I mean, I've lived it. And. I'm not an expert, college-wise on, sports nutrition and exercise, but I have all my experience to draw on, right? And all these times out there running, and, my second 100 miler, right? I didn't finish, but I had to I was pushing. I had a lot of pain, and I was like, all right, get to the next aid station, and I made it to that aid station, and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want to quit, right? I'm biting it off one bite at a time.
Is this where your Achilles?
Yeah, so I ended up like tearing, getting a partial tear in my Achilles, right? And luckily, it didn't fully tear. Otherwise, I would have had to get surgery and whatever. But
David Goggins would have kept running with three torn Achilles.
So that's where it's like, to balance, right?
Yeah, I know.
Right? I run on broken legs, man.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
And that mindset is good to a point, right? And so this was the first time I had ever not completed something.
Really? It
right?
must have been pretty bad.
So for me,
you're able to push through a lot of pain.
I've never not finished a race. I've never not finished, an event, and I've always been able to just push through. Like you just keep pushing through the pain.
And so how far into the 100 miles were you?
It was like 86.6, so about 87 miles.
So how did you? I got to ask because
right
I know
there.
how. Yeah, I totally understand that. Did you? Where you're at, but did you feel like the next day, like, damn, I was only 15 miles away.
Okay.
I should have just fucking done it.
Oh, no. Like, for sure. So it's a balance, right? So, like, there's the demons in your head whispering, and there's like, both sides, right? Like, dude, it was 13 miles. I had such a buffer in time. At that point, it was so jacked up, I was limping. I could have limped the last 13 miles and had enough time to go.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? It was like, probably would have been cutting it down to the wire.
I think that what you did was the right choice, but it's hard when you're like addicted to fitness and certain.
Like,
it's hard not to like, damn, did I do my best? And you're always questioning yourself, what could I have done more?
Yeah.
Like at least that's how I am.
No, and it weighs on it because you have friends out there running the event, and you want to finish too, right?
Yeah.
Your friends are finishing. Other people you met during the race that you've been running with the whole race. You want to finish right next to them because you've made friends overnight with them.
Yeah.
But then it's like what ended up happening was I ended up going to PT, and the first thing the physical therapist said was, "Hey man, it wasn't if, it was when. Like if you had kept going, like you would have definitely made it worse." And so the recovery, instead of being, was it being like just over 2 months, would have been over 6 months to a year.
If they had to like fully reattach it, right?
Oh yeah, if I had done more damage.
Oh, man.
So
and then imagine how long it would take you to be able to start running like that again.
Yeah,
right?
but it's like
the
the demons are in your head. Like, oh man, you've already ran farther than this. At that point I had already ran 100 miles.
Everything's
in
telling
worse
you
conditions.
why you could. Yeah.
Like you can do this. Like this is fine. It's only 13 miles left. Like this is fine. You know the trails. You've got all the big climbs behind you. You've got a time buffer.
Yeah.
Like just suck it up and keep going. And at some point you gotta like.
Which I'm sure carried you through quite a bit of miles before you actually.
Yeah, the 10 miles before that sucked pretty hard.
Okay.
Like I ended up feeling like an ice pick was going through my Achilles tendon.
Oh man.
And I kind of like almost fell over and was like and then I started doing like cold sweats. So like I felt really cold, but I was sweating.
Oh wow.
And I was like, this is not normal. And so, you kind of have to sit there. And luckily, like my crew was really great. They were like, hey, like we don't want to push you either way. Like we're here to support you, but we also don't want you to jack yourself up. And so, like looking back now, like, it was definitely counter to my personality, but it was.
No, it was definitely the smart decision.
It was the smart, and like having done.
I just know what it's like to have
through,
the obsessive mindset, and how it's like nothing's ever good enough anyway, right?
Yeah, and so now it's like, okay, look, like now and the other thing too is like setbacks are going to happen in life, both with fitness and just life in general. You could be your workplace, no one's perfect. You're going to make mistakes at work. You're going to make mistakes in races. And lucky for me, it wasn't like this last line qualifier. I had already qualified for Western States with the first race. So like there wasn't really anything on the line. Okay. So I was very fortunate, right? But whether it's at work or with your fitness, right? Like you're going to make mistakes, and the separator is like how you learn from them, right? Totally. So for me, it was like I immediately the next day, I could barely walk, but I made it over to the table and I got out a notepad and was like, all right, what went well in this race and what did not go well, right? So for me, I was like, okay, when I started feeling Achilles, I overdosed with caffeine, which gave myself, like pressure on my lungs and like all these mess of things. And I was like, okay, so note to self, don't do that again. And then other thing was, hey, like stretch, prioritize mobility more and strength training. I got so concerned about just doing my runs and getting the miles in that I became less concerned about
the accessory stuff,
like stretching. I was like, I'm stretching 10 minutes a day. Well, that was good for me when I was running, 50 Ks.
Yeah.
But once you start training longer and longer hours, that mobility and flexibility is huge.
So one thing I think that you've done the research, because you've done so much endurance work, so many races, bikes, running. So you have the experience. If you had, just so some people at home can learn, if you had some information that you have now that would have been so valuable to give to yourself in the beginning, what would that be?
I definitely, we've hit them on already. Okay, so the first one again was sleep.
Okay.
Because I definitely underestimated the value of that. And nutrition, right? So when I was younger, getting into sports, I kind of just, like I said, ate whatever, and we talk about joking, eating the pizza bites.
Yeah.
But it's like, and then we also talked about how like building up to it, right? And
like making small progressions and consistent small progressions.
Consistent, because that stuff adds up time. You lay one brick a day, next thing you know, you've got a whole wall built,
totally.
Right? And so people underestimate that, right? And you read 10 pages a day, you can finish a lot of books pretty quick just by reading 10 pages a day.
Totally.
Or even 5 pages, honestly,
Just the consistency of showing up and doing it.
It's the consistency,
yeah, absolutely.
And I think so many people get fixated on the goal that, they get, they miss the small things, all the surrounding things that play a factor, right? So if someone's trying to run a marathon for the first time, they get so fixated on, I'm going to run 26.2 miles. I need to train. I need to get the miles in, that they forget to prioritize sleep. They forget to stretch, right? They're too busy. They're going to spend that free time they have running the miles they have on their training plan.
Yeah.
And they're going to skip the stretching. They're going to skip the mobility workouts, and they're going to not prioritize the nutrition,
the small stuff that adds up. The
small stuff that really adds up.
So what is your... I want to hear... Let's switch gears. I want to hear your most embarrassing story that happened on a race.
Okay, so it's like there's like a couple different things. Like in a race, definitely. There's been like where guys can like run while peeing, and it was like something that like I had wanted to try. And so the idea in a race is everyone's running the same direction, so you don't have to really worry about anyone like seeing you peeing because everyone's facing there. And if you're running, you're like, hey man, just like don't turn around. Like I'm just gonna run and pee. And then that's when you're peeing and you kind of like come around a corner and there's like a spectator and you're like, this is awkward. My bad, bro. Sorry. It's cold outside, I swear, And so, it is nice though because like you have running shorts. So like.
Oh, so you're not just peeing in your pants.
No, you don't pee in your pants.
Oh,
no,
okay.
You can literally, with running shorts, like you have the little liner, like they're called like nut huggers, right? So you have like a little liner, like built in underwear essentially. So you can just whip it out the side and you kind of like do this waddle while you run. It's like a slow waddle.
Oh my God.
But if you think about it, the reason it's super key, if you stop to pee for 1 minute, right? But you pee like 15 times throughout a race, throughout 100 miles, throughout like a 30-hour race,
Totally.
24-hour race, that's 15 minutes faster you could have finished. That's 15 minutes longer you could have spent at aid stations or, taking a nap or doing anything for 15 minutes. But now you're moving the whole time, right?
Okay, that makes more sense that you're like, I thought maybe you're just running and just letting it rip.
Oh,
and,
no.
Oh, I know it's going to be cold later. I'm going to be
honest,
chafing, but...
I will be honest. If it's like dumping down rain, like if it's already pouring, I'm already soaked. Dude, just pee while you run, man. You're already wet. Like you just, it's dumping out. It's thunderstorm. Like there's no difference. You can just pee while running. But if it's a regular day, heck no, man. I'm not going to pee on myself.
So the most embarrassing story is running around a corner with your Peter in your hands
like
with a spectator watching.
Yeah, that and like it wasn't, the other time was like it wasn't a race, but it was just a training run. And I hadn't seen anyone for hours. And, I was like, man, nature's calling, man, I got to poop, right? And so I had learned through my training runs to bring wipes, right? Pro tip for runners, bring disposable wipes and that we don't have to rely on leaves and knowing your flora and fauna wherever you're at.
Yeah.
And so I was on this training run. It had been at least, actually, it was the entire whole first half of the morning. Never saw a soul. And so I decided to pop off the trail to go take a number 2 in the woods just in case like the occasional mountain biker or runner came by, even though I hadn't seen anyone all day. And so I popped off into the woods in the middle of nowhere and I took what I thought was the most massive dump ever. And I get up, I get up, I'm pulling up my running shorts and I look over and I make eye contact with this group of guys who are further into the woods in the middle of nowhere. And they're just like, hey, and I'm like, hi, sorry, I just like totally just ruined your morning or afternoon.
I'm wondering what they were doing out there.
I don't know what they were doing. I don't know. What are the
Walter
what are the
White
odds of like I mean, I was in the middle of nowhere, off the trail. I mean, I could have picked anywhere to step off the trail. I'm even turning probably red just thinking about it now. I was mortified. I was like, I know they saw the whole thing go down or out, whatever you want to put it. I was so embarrassed. I was like, dude, they heard it. They probably smelt it, man. I was so embarrassed.
Oh, man.
And, you know, I remember thinking, wow, that was such an adrenaline boost. The next 2 miles, I think, were my fastest miles.
Yeah, I'm getting the hell out of here.
Get out of there and get back to like base. Like I was so embarrassed. Like I can still, I'm getting turning red talking about it now. You know, but like in those moments, you know, all you gotta do is just laugh at yourself. You know what? Hey, like, what are the odds? And then
those are funny. Those aren't that embarrassing. Though.
You know,
I think you've had a pretty safe run, I guess.
I think like, there's that, and then you know, it wasn't embarrassing, but like, after my first 100-miler, you know, my friends and I were all like broken, and we're just trying to like,
I was going to ask about this, like what the recovery process was.
So the first 100-miler and first ultra marathons, my first 100K was 62.2 miles, and it was pretty rough. Like I couldn't walk the next day. You know, I definitely pushed quite an aggressive training plan. So, you know, I had really pushed myself, and you know, so I was like trying to walk. So I was kind of ready for that. When I finished my first 100-miler, I was like, okay, it was, you know, canyons, UTMB canyons. And so, you know, that night I could already feel myself getting stiff. And so when I woke up in the middle of the night to go pee, I underestimated how much pain I would be in. And so I was like, oh man, you know, I earned this pain. But man, I had to pee. And so I got up to go pee, and I had to lean against the wall, and I had to shuffle. I couldn't stand up straight on my own. And I got to the bathroom, and I sat down to pee because I couldn't stand. And apparently I passed out because my head hit the wall, and all I hear from like the living room was like, hey, from my wife, like, hey, is everything okay? Like I heard a thud, and I was slumped over on the side, and I had like literally passed out, and I didn't even realize it. I thought I had fallen asleep. No, I totally passed out.
Wow.
You know, luckily I was still sitting there. You know, I didn't fall to the ground after that.
That would be the most embarrassing, getting found with your pants down.
Oh my God!
Face in
Yeah,
the
just
ground,
on the toilet, you're just like
ass in the air.
Yeah. You're just like, I have no idea what happened.
Yeah,
man. Where am I? You know, and like, it was like I kind of just teleported through time. Honestly, is what it felt like, and you know, ended up just passing. I've never passed out until that moment.
So when you finished that 100-miler, other than that, like that's kind of funny. But did you have anything really? Did you break or sprain? Any like were you able to go back to work 2 days later?
Yeah. No, I went back to work 2 days later. I took the day off after the race, and then like 2 days later, I remember we finished on a Sunday, and I was back to work Tuesday.
Wow.
But I had a site walk with a client, so I told him, I was like, hey man, how about we do something different today? How about you jump in my truck and we'll drive around? And luckily he had kind of known like what I was doing, so it was pretty easy to kind of, you know, get him on board, because he was like, dude, I'm surprised you're even here.
Yeah,
I was like,
am too.
I am, you know, just surviving. But, you know, something I had heard about was, you know, they say, oh, after your race, like, you expect, like, oh, man, you just ran 100 miles. Like, you know, my parents were there. They drove down from Oregon. They're like, let's go out to eat. And I'm like, cool, that sounds great. I think I probably only ate a few bites. You know, and even the next day.
You think because your adrenaline's just still
because your
up?
stomach, you've taxed your system so much. Yeah. It took me a good couple days to, like, fully get my appetite back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think it was like by like day 3 or 4, I was like back to normal on my appetite. And
that's definitely a law of diminishing returns, because like a little bit of cardio gets you hungrier later, but if you overdo it, I guess it just crashes the other way.
Yeah, you know, and they say, you know, 100 miler is pretty taxing on the body, obviously, no matter how much you train. But yeah, you know, it was like I said, that was something I had heard about, but then to experience it was like, dude, this is weird.
So what's the next goal? You run 100 miles. Where is there to go after that?
So there's the race, you know, where I screwed up my Achilles, Rio de Lagos. So my goal is to come back to that, but not just to finish it, because like I already have done the 100 miles, but like to finish in sub 24 hours. Ooh, right, I was kind of on pace, so to kind of go for a better time.
That's 10 hours quicker than your other 100 miler.
100 miler, yeah, wow. And we were on track to get pretty much faster, you know. But like it kind of goes into what I was saying earlier. Is like there's different types of 100 milers, right? Different types of year, you know, different times of the year, terrain, right? I tend to be a warm weather athlete, so I enjoy temperatures above 70 degrees. I thrive in, you know, even like 80s and 90s. I just love the heat. I love the sunshine. You know, once it gets dropping down below 40, below 50, I do not like the cold. Yeah. I will operate, obviously. I mean, I train in the snow. I've done it all, but it's just not as enjoyable. Yeah. And I just dislike it. You know, my favorite things when I can just have my shorts and tank top go out for a run.
Nice.
You know, but there's different things, right? So some people, you know, they don't like the heat, so they're going to pick a cooler weather race. You know, and some people don't like as much climbing. They're more oriented towards, you know, basically doing a more of a flatter course.
Yeah.
So they'll go for that, and that's their goal, right? You know, for me, I have a strength that I think power hiking is one of my favorite things, right? So if it's a super hilly course, I can power hike pretty fast. So
nice.
You know, keep a higher average overall,
Right.
So you can run 100 miles and it can take you 34 hours, or you can run 100 miles and have you take you 24 hours.
As long as you pee when you're running, you'll save more time, right?
Save time, yeah. And just get to that next aid station,
Yeah,
man,
get to the next aid station.
Make sure no one's coming around the corner. Get a little visibility. That's all I'll say.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, right on.
Yeah, I don't know. Just like that's what I've learned. But yeah, it's a lot of it's mental. You know,
Cool.
Consistency, like you said.
Well, dude, there's so many more things I'd like to talk to you about, and maybe I can have you back. I'd love to chat about some more things. But for people who are watching at home who might want to check out some of the stuff you're doing and get some inspiration, where can they find you?
Man, you have to just reach out to me directly, man. I'm off the grid, man.
Okay,
I got no social
Instagram,
media, my Instagram, like my profiles are out there. I'd say Strava. Find me on Strava.
Okay, find him on Strava. All right,
the closest thing I've got.
Maybe he'll start pushing you guys to the next level.
You know, but yeah, that's I'm like I'm some old school, man. You know.
Nice.
Come hit me up.
Who has time for TikTok when you're running 30 miles a day? Huh?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, no, man.
Right on.
Yeah, so thank you
This is
so
a great
much,
conversation.
man.
Yeah, thank you for coming out.